The dust clung to Dahlia Ashford's worn traveling dress like a second skin as she stood at the edge of Roswell, New Mexico, watching the afternoon sun blaze across the desert horizon in the summer of 1883. Her leather trunk and carpetbag, containing everything she owned, positioned beside her weathered boots, while her heart hammered with equal parts desperation and determination. She had walked the last 3 miles after the stagecoach driver refused to take her any further without additional payment she did not possess. Her auburn hair, once pinned neatly beneath her bonnet, now hung in damp tendrils against her neck. The journey from Missouri had drained what little money her aunt had left her, and now she stood in this unfamiliar territory with nothing but a name scrawled on paper, and the address of a distant cousin who supposedly ran a boarding house somewhere in town. The sound of hooves against packed earth made her turn. A rider approached from the main road, silhouetted against the brilliant orange sky. As he drew closer, Dahlia could make out broad shoulders beneath a dusty coat, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his face, and the easy posture of a man who had spent more hours in the saddle than on his feet. Vincent Marshall slowed his horse as he noticed the young woman standing alone with her belongings. It was not common to see someone stranded at the town's edge, especially not a lady who looked as though she had traveled through hell itself to arrive here. His dark eyes took in her exhausted posture, the way she straightened her spine despite obvious fatigue, and something in his chest tightened with concern. "Afternoon, miss," he said, tipping his hat as he brought his chestnut mare to a complete stop. "You look like you could use some assistance." Dahlia measured him carefully. She had learned caution on her journey west, but desperation sometimes required trust. His face, now visible beneath the hat's brim, showed weathered handsomeness marked by sun and wind. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes that held genuine concern rather than the predatory interest she had learned to recognize. "I am looking for a boarding house run by Mrs. Catherine Walsh," Dahlia said, her voice hoarse from dust and thirst. "I was told it was in Roswell, but the driver left me here without proper directions." Vincent's expression softened. "Catherine's place is a good 2 miles into town, down past the mercantile and the church. It is a fair walk, especially carrying luggage in this heat." He paused, then made a decision that would alter the course of both their lives. "Let me give you a ride." Dahlia hesitated only a moment before nodding. "That is very kind of you, sir. I confess I am not certain I could manage the distance in this sun." Vincent dismounted with fluid grace and secured her trunk behind his saddle with practiced efficiency. The carpetbag he handed back to her. "You will need to ride with me," he said matter-of-factly. "Lucy here is strong, but she will manage better with the weight distributed properly." He helped Dahlia mount first, then swung up behind her with an ease that spoke of years in the saddle. She tensed as his arms came around her to grasp the reins, but his touch remained respectful, his body positioned to give her as much space as possible while still maintaining control of the horse. "I am Vincent Marshall," he said as they began moving toward town. "I work at the Rockingham Ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Dahlia Ashford," she replied, acutely aware of his solid presence behind her. "From Missouri originally. I have come west to stay with my cousin Catherine, though I have not seen her in nearly 15 years. "Catherine is a good woman," Vincent said. "Took me in for a month when I first arrived in Roswell 3 years back, before I found steady work at the ranch. You will be in good hands." They rode in silence for a stretch, the horse's rhythmic gait and the whisper of desert wind the only sounds. Dahlia felt her exhaustion catching up with her, the warmth of the man behind her oddly comforting despite their stranger status. Vincent, for his part, found himself noticing details he had no business noticing about a woman he had just met: the delicate curve of her neck, the way wisps of auburn hair caught the fading sunlight, the subtle lavender scent that persisted despite her dusty journey. "What brings you to New Mexico territory?" Vincent asked, partly from genuine curiosity and partly to distract himself from the disconcerting awareness of her in his arms. Dahlia was quiet for a moment, then answered with careful honesty. "My aunt passed 3 months ago. She was the last family I had in Missouri. Before she died, she told me about Catherine, gave me her address. I sold what little we had and bought passage west." "That took courage," Vincent said quietly, "leaving everything familiar behind." "It took desperation more than courage," Dahlia admitted. "There was nothing left for me there. No prospects, no family, no future. At least here I might make something of myself, perhaps find work, build a new life." Vincent understood that sentiment more than she knew. He had arrived in Roswell under similar circumstances, fleeing memories and mistakes made in Texas, seeking redemption in new territory. "Roswell is a growing town," he said. "There are opportunities here for those willing to work hard." As they entered the main stretch of town, Dahlia observed her new home with keen interest. Roswell was larger than she had expected, with a proper main street lined with wooden buildings, a mercantile, a saloon, a church with a white steeple, a doctor's office, and various other establishments that spoke of a community establishing itself in the harsh desert landscape. People moved along the wooden sidewalks, and the sound of a blacksmith's hammer rang from somewhere down a side street. Vincent guided Lucy past the church and turned down a residential street where houses sat behind low fences, some with actual grass struggling to grow in carefully tended yards. He stopped before a 2-story house with a wide porch and a sign that read Walsh Boarding House in neat painted letters. "Here we are," Vincent said, dismounting and then helping Dahlia down. His hands spanned her waist as he lifted her, and for a brief moment they stood close enough that she could see gold flecks in his brown eyes. "Thank you," Dahlia said, her voice softer than she intended. "I do not know what I would have done without your kindness." "Anyone would have done the same," Vincent replied, though they both knew that was not entirely true. The front door opened and a woman emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. Catherine Walsh was in her 40s, with graying blonde hair and a face that suggested both warmth and no-nonsense practicality. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. "Good Lord, is that little Dahlia?" Catherine exclaimed, hurrying down the porch steps. "I received your letter only yesterday. I was not expecting you for another week at least." "The connections were better than anticipated," Dahlia said as her cousin enveloped her in a warm embrace. "I hope my early arrival is not an inconvenience." "Nonsense, child. You are family." Catherine pulled back, studying Dahlia's exhausted face with concern before turning to Vincent. "Thank you for bringing her home, Vincent. Will you stay for supper? It is the least I can offer for your trouble." Vincent glanced at Dahlia, who met his gaze with an expression he could not quite read. "I should be getting back to the ranch," he said, though the words felt wrong even as he spoke them. "Please stay," Dahlia said impulsively. "I would like to properly thank you for your help." Something in her tone made Vincent reconsider. "Well, I suppose the ranch can do without me for another hour or two." Catherine's knowing smile suggested she saw more than either of them intended to reveal. "Wonderful. Vincent, bring that trunk inside while I get Dahlia settled. Supper will be ready within the hour." The boarding house interior was clean and comfortable, with worn but well-maintained furniture and the smell of something savory cooking. Catherine led Dahlia upstairs to a small room with a window overlooking the side yard. "This will be yours for as long as you need it," Catherine said. "No charge for family, though I will expect you to help around the house if you are staying more than a few days." "Of course," Dahlia agreed. "I intend to find employment as soon as possible. I do not wish to be a burden." Catherine's expression softened. "You could never be a burden, dear. Your mother and I were close as sisters before she moved to Missouri. When I heard of her passing all those years ago, I wished I had been there for you. I am glad you thought to come to me now." Tears pricked Dahlia's eyes at the mention of her mother. "I barely remember her. I was so young when she died." "She would be proud of the woman you have become," Catherine said gently. "Now, freshen up. There is water in the pitcher. Come down when you are ready." Alone in her new room, Dahlia allowed herself a moment to simply breathe. She had made it. Against all odds and through considerable hardship, she had reached Roswell and found her cousins welcoming home. And if her thoughts kept drifting to dark eyes and strong hands and a voice like warm honey, well, she was too tired to examine that too closely just yet. Downstairs, Vincent found himself helping Catherine set the table, something he had not done since his mother's death years ago. The older woman worked with efficient grace, setting out plates and silverware while keeping up a steady stream of conversation. "She is a lovely girl," Catherine said casually. "Dahlia, I mean. She has her mother's spirit. Elizabeth was always the brave one, willing to venture into unknown territory." Vincent kept his expression neutral. "She seems like she has had a difficult journey." "Most of us out here have," Catherine replied. "That is what makes the West what it is, people seeking second chances, new beginnings." She paused, giving Vincent a pointed look. "Some find what they are looking for." Before Vincent could respond, Dahlia appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She had washed the dust from her face and neck, repinned her hair into a more respectable arrangement, and changed into a simpler dress of deep green that brought out the color of her eyes. Vincent found himself staring before he caught himself and looked away. Supper was a hearty stew with fresh bread, simple but delicious. Two other boarders joined them, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Patterson who worked as a clerk at the land office, and a middle-aged widow named Mrs. Chen, who did seamstress work from her room. Both welcomed Dahlia warmly and peppered her with friendly questions about her journey and plans. Vincent found himself content to listen as Dahlia spoke, noting the intelligence in her observations and the dry humor that occasionally surfaced in her responses. She had an expressive face that revealed more than she perhaps intended, wariness mixed with hope, exhaustion tempered by determination. When the meal concluded, Vincent knew he could delay no longer. "I should head back," he said, standing and reaching for his hat. "Thank you for the meal, Catherine." "You are always welcome at my table," Catherine replied. "You know that." Dahlia walked with him to the front door, suddenly shy now that they were alone again. "Thank you again, Mr. Marshall. I truly am grateful for your help today." "Vincent," he said. "Please, just call me Vincent." "Vincent," she repeated, and he liked the way his name sounded in her voice. "Will you be in town again soon?" The question held a note of hopefulness that made his heart beat faster. "I come to town most Saturdays for supplies. Sometimes during the week if the ranch needs something specific." "Perhaps I will see you then," Dahlia said softly. "Perhaps you will," Vincent agreed. He held her gaze for a long moment, committing her face to memory, before finally settling his hat on his head and stepping out into the cooling evening air. As he rode back toward the ranch, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, Vincent found himself already planning reasons to come to town before Saturday. He had not felt this way since before Texas, before the mistakes and losses that had driven him west. The feeling was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. Back at the boarding house, Dahlia stood at her window watching the road long after Vincent's figure had disappeared into the dusk. Catherine's knowing voice drifted up from downstairs, and Dahlia smiled despite herself. She had come to Roswell seeking a new beginning, but she had not expected it to arrive in the form of a cowboy with kind eyes and gentle hands. The next morning, Dahlia woke to bright sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of activity in the street below. For the first time in months, she felt something approaching optimism. After helping Catherine with breakfast and morning chores, she set out to explore Roswell properly and investigate employment opportunities. The town revealed itself to be more substantial than she had initially thought. Besides the main street establishments, there were several residential neighborhoods, a small schoolhouse, and various workshops and businesses spreading out from the center. Dahlia inquired at the mercantile about work, but the owner already had help. The seamstress shop was similarly staffed, though Mrs. Chen had mentioned the owner was her friend. It was at the school that Dahlia found possibility. The teacher, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Porter, was struggling to manage 30 students of varying ages all in one room. "Can you read and write well?" Miss Porter asked bluntly. "Yes, madam. My aunt was a teacher before her health declined. She educated me thoroughly." "Can you manage children? Keep order without being cruel?" Dahlia thought of the patience required to care for her aunt during her long illness. "I believe I can." Miss Porter studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I can offer you 3 afternoons a week to start, helping with the younger students. The pay is modest, but it is honest work." "I accept," Dahlia said immediately. "Thank you, Miss Porter." Walking back to the boarding house, Dahlia felt lighter than she had in years. She had been in Roswell barely a full day and already had employment and a place to stay. The future suddenly seemed full of possibility rather than dread. That evening, she helped Catherine prepare supper while telling her about the teaching position. "Miss Porter has a good reputation," Catherine said approvingly. "She is strict but fair, and she has done wonders with the children here." "I am looking forward to it," Dahlia admitted. "I always enjoyed the times my aunt allowed me to help with her students." "You have a good head on your shoulders," Catherine said. "You will do well here, Dahlia. I can feel it." The week passed quickly as Dahlia settled into a routine. She helped Catherine with the boarding house in the mornings, worked at the school 3 afternoons, and spent her free time exploring Roswell and getting to know the other residents. Mrs. Chen began teaching her basic sewing skills in the evenings, and Mr. Patterson regaled her with stories of the territory's history. But through it all, Dahlia found her thoughts returning to Vincent Marshall with embarrassing frequency. She watched for him on the streets, listened for mention of his name in conversations, and felt her heart jump every time a rider passed on horseback. It was foolish, she told herself. She had known the man for mere hours. Yet something about their brief encounter had lodged itself firmly in her consciousness. Saturday arrived with clear skies and building heat. Dahlia helped Catherine at the morning market, purchasing vegetables and goods for the week ahead. She told herself she was not watching for Vincent, but when she finally spotted him tying his horse outside the mercantile, her pulse quickened traitorously. Vincent saw her at almost the same moment. He had thought of little else but Dahlia Ashford all week, imagining conversations they might have and inventing excuses to visit the boarding house. Now, seeing her in a pale blue dress with the sun catching auburn highlights in her hair, he felt like a green boy rather than a man of 28 who had seen his share of life. "Miss Ashford," he said, approaching with his hat in his hands. "It is good to see you again." "Vincent," she replied, warmth coloring her voice. I wondered if you might be in town today. I told you I come for supplies on Saturdays, he said, pleased that she had remembered. How has your first week in Roswell been? Dahlia launched into an animated description of her teaching position and the people she had met. Vincent listened intently, charmed by her enthusiasm and the way her whole face lit up when she spoke of the children at the school. When she finished, he found himself speaking without thinking. There is a dance next Saturday evening at the community hall. Would you allow me to escort you? Dahlia's eyes widened slightly. I would like that very much. I will call for you at 7 if that suits, Vincent said, relief and anticipation flooding through him in equal measure. 7 is perfect, Dahlia agreed, a smile playing at her lips. They talked for a while longer before Catherine called for Dahlia to help carry purchases home. Vincent watched her go, already counting the days until Saturday. The week between felt interminable to both of them. Vincent found himself paying extra attention to his appearance, getting a proper haircut and beard trim in town, making sure his good shirt was clean and pressed. His fellow ranch hands teased him mercilessly when they realized the reason for his unusual fastidiousness. Dahlia enlisted Mrs. Chen's help in altering her best dress, a deep rose color that had been her aunt's and needed taking in at the waist. Catherine watched the preparations with barely concealed amusement and offered to lend Dahlia her good shawl and a pair of delicate earrings that had belonged to her mother. When Saturday finally arrived, Dahlia was ready a full hour early, pacing her room nervously while Catherine laughed at her from downstairs. He is a good man, that Vincent Marshall, Catherine called up, but try not to wear a hole in my floor with your worrying. At precisely 7, Vincent knocked on the door. He wore dark trousers and a clean white shirt under his vest, his boots polished and his hair neatly combed. When Dahlia descended the stairs, he felt his breath catch. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. Something about her presence, the grace in her movements, the intelligence in her eyes, drew him like nothing he had experienced before. You look lovely, he managed, offering his arm. Thank you, Dahlia replied, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. You look very handsome yourself. Catherine saw them off with explicit instructions to Vincent to have Dahlia home at a reasonable hour, her eyes twinkling with matchmaking satisfaction. The community hall was already crowded when they arrived, with a 4-piece band warming up in the corner and tables laden with food and drink along one wall. Vincent knew many of the people present and introduced Dahlia to ranchers, townspeople, and fellow workers. She was gratified to see several of the students from the school with their families. When the music began, Vincent led her to the dance floor with a confidence that surprised her. I did not take you for a dancer, Dahlia said as they moved together through the steps of a waltz. My mother insisted all her children learn properly, Vincent replied. I am glad for it now. They danced 3 dances in succession before taking a break for refreshments. Dahlia found herself laughing at Vincent's dry observations about various attendees and his stories about life on the ranch. He had a quiet humor that revealed itself slowly, and she discovered she wanted to know everything about him, his past, his dreams, what made him choose Roswell. Tell me about Texas, she said eventually, sensing there was a story there. Vincent's expression sobered slightly. What makes you think I am from Texas? Catherine mentioned you came from there 3 years ago, and sometimes you have a trace of an accent that is distinctly Texan. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke with careful honesty. I made mistakes there. Got involved with people I should have avoided, participated in activities I am not proud of. Nothing illegal, he added quickly, seeing her concerned expression. But close enough. When my mother died and there was nothing keeping me there anymore, I decided to start fresh somewhere new. That takes courage, Dahlia said softly, admitting mistakes and choosing to change. You said something similar about your own journey, Vincent reminded her. It seems we both came to New Mexico seeking second chances. Perhaps we were meant to find them together, Dahlia said, then blushed at her own boldness. Vincent's hand found hers under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. Perhaps we were, he agreed quietly. They stayed until the dance ended near midnight, talking and laughing and dancing until Dahlia's feet ached pleasantly and Vincent's face hurt from smiling. The ride back to the boarding house was slower than necessary, both reluctant for the evening to end. At Catherine's door, Vincent helped Dahlia down from the horse and walked her to the porch. I had a wonderful time tonight, Dahlia said. Thank you for inviting me. Would you allow me to call on you properly? Vincent asked. Not just at dances or by chance in town, but actual courting. Dahlia's heart soared. Yes, she said simply. I would like that very much. Vincent lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then I will see you soon, Dahlia Ashford. She watched him ride away, then floated inside to find Catherine waiting with tea and knowing eyes. I take it the evening went well. Oh, Catherine, Dahlia sighed, collapsing into a chair. I think I am falling in love with him. I suspected as much, Catherine said with satisfaction. He is a good man, Dahlia. He has worked hard to build a respectable life here. You could do far worse. It feels too fast, Dahlia admitted. I have only known him a week and a half. Sometimes you just know, Catherine said wisely. I knew I would marry my Henry within 3 days of meeting him. We had 22 happy years before he passed. Do not question good fortune when it finds you, dear girl. True to his word, Vincent began courting Dahlia properly. He came to the boarding house twice during the week for supervised visits in Catherine's parlor, where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. On Sunday, he escorted her to church, and then on a picnic outside town, where they lay on a blanket watching clouds drift across the endless sky while sharing their histories and dreams. Dahlia learned that Vincent was one of 5 children, the only boy among 4 sisters. His father had died in the Civil War when Vincent was 12, leaving him to help his mother manage as best they could. He had worked various jobs in Texas ranch hand, stable manager, even a brief stint helping with freight before the situation that drove him to New Mexico. He never specified exactly what had happened, and Dahlia did not press, trusting he would tell her when ready. Vincent learned that Dahlia had lost her mother to illness at 7 and her father to a farming accident 2 years later. Her mother's sister had taken her in and raised her with firm but loving discipline. Teaching had always been Dahlia's passion, inspired by her aunt's dedication to education. She dreamed of someday having her own school, a place where every child could learn regardless of their family's circumstances. You have a good heart, Vincent told her one evening as they sat on Catherine's porch swing, the summer stars brilliant overhead. You want to make the world better. Do you not want the same? Dahlia asked. I suppose I do, Vincent admitted, though I have not always known how to go about it. I spent a lot of years just trying to survive, to keep my head above water. It is only recently that I have begun thinking about what comes next, about building something lasting. Dahlia turned to look at him in the moonlight. What do you want to build, Vincent? He met her gaze steadily. A home, a family, a life that matters. I have been saving my wages carefully for 2 years now. The ranch foreman has mentioned that the owner is thinking of subdividing some of the land, selling parcels to trusted workers who want to start their own spreads. It is not certain yet, but if it happens, I would have enough for a down payment on a piece of land, enough to start small, build from there. That sounds wonderful, Dahlia said softly. Your own ranch. It would be hard work, Vincent cautioned. Years of struggle before any real profit. But it would be mine. Ours, he corrected, then stopped, realizing what he had said. Dahlia's breath caught. Ours, Vincent took her hand carefully. I know we have not known each other long, but Dahlia, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You make me want to be better, to build something meaningful. When I think about the future now, you are in it. You are the center of it. Tears pricked Dahlia's eyes. I feel the same way. It frightens me sometimes how much I care for you already. But it also feels right, like this is what I came here to find. Not just a new beginning, but you. Vincent cupped her face gently with his free hand. May I kiss you? Yes, Dahlia whispered. The kiss was tender and careful, full of restrained passion and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were trembling slightly. Vincent rested his forehead against hers, breathing carefully. I want to do this properly, he said. Court you the right way, give you time to be certain. But Dahlia, I need you to know I intend to marry you if you will have me. I will have you, Dahlia replied, joy bubbling up through her. But you are right. We should take the time to do this properly. I want Catherine to know you as I am coming to know you. I want the town to see us build something real together. They sat together on the porch swing until Catherine appeared to remind them of propriety and late hours, their hands linked and their hearts full of possibility. The months that followed were among the happiest either had known. Vincent's visits became a regular fixture at the boarding house, and Catherine grew genuinely fond of the young man who so obviously adored her cousin. Dahlia's work at the school expanded to 5 days a week when one of the other assistants left town, providing her with a more substantial income and deeper satisfaction in her work. In November, Vincent received confirmation that the ranch owner was indeed selling parcels of land to interested workers. The piece Vincent wanted was 200 acres with a creek running through it, and enough grazing land to support a small herd to start. The price was fair, and Vincent had saved enough for the down payment with some left over to begin building. He proposed officially on Christmas Eve, going down on one knee in Catherine's parlor with a simple gold band he had commissioned from the town jeweler. Dahlia said yes through happy tears, and Catherine broke out her late husband's good whiskey to celebrate. They decided to marry in the spring, giving Vincent time to build at least a basic house on his new land, and Dahlia time to finish the school term. The winter passed in a flurry of planning and preparation. Vincent worked on his land every spare moment, and on Sundays, Dahlia rode out with him to watch the progress. Together, they planned the layout of their future home, a modest main room with a kitchen, 2 bedrooms to start with the possibility of adding more later, and a wide porch for sitting out on summer evenings. The ranch hands helped with the heavy work, and Vincent's boss donated lumber at cost, pleased to see one of his best workers putting down permanent roots. Dahlia and Mrs. Chen sewed curtains and linens, while Catherine contributed household goods she had stored away. The community rallied around them, as small communities often do, pleased to see young people building a future together. In April, with wildflowers blooming across the desert and the house on Vincent's land complete enough to live in, they married in the small church in Roswell. Dahlia wore a new dress of cream-colored silk that Mrs. Chen and her seamstress friend had made as a wedding gift. Vincent wore his best suit, borrowed from his foreman, and looked both terrified and thrilled. Catherine cried through the entire ceremony. Half the town attended, cramming into the small church to witness the union of the cowboy and the teacher who had found each other by chance at the town's edge less than a year earlier. The reception lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing, and sincere good wishes from people who had come to care for them both. When they finally escaped to ride out to their new home, the stars were brilliant overhead, and the spring air was warm and sweet. Vincent carried Dahlia over the threshold of their house, and they stood together in the main room, taking in the reality of their new life. "Are you happy?" Vincent asked, suddenly uncertain. Dahlia turned to him, her eyes shining. "Happier than I ever imagined possible. When I stood at the edge of Roswell last summer with all my belongings, tired and uncertain and afraid, I never dreamed I would find this. Find you. I am the fortunate one," Vincent said, pulling her close. "You gave me a reason to build something, to become the man I wanted to be." Their first kiss as husband and wife was deeper than any before, full of promise and passion and the beginning of their shared life. They spent their wedding night in the house Vincent had built with his own hands, and Dahlia thought she had never felt safer or more loved. The first year of marriage brought challenges along with joy. The ranch demanded constant work, and money was tight as they invested every spare dollar into building their herd and improving their land. Dahlia continued teaching, her income helping to sustain them through the lean times. There were moments of frustration and exhaustion, arguments over money and decisions, the difficult adjustments of learning to live together and compromise. But through it all, their love deepened and matured. They learned each other's rhythms and moods, found ways to support and sustain each other through difficulties. Vincent proved to be a patient and considerate husband, never dismissing Dahlia's opinions and actively seeking her counsel on ranch decisions. Dahlia discovered reserves of strength she had not known she possessed, managing both her teaching work and the demands of running a ranch household. By their first anniversary, they had 20 head of cattle, 2 horses besides Vincent's original mare, a small chicken coop, and a vegetable garden that Dahlia tended with determination despite the challenging desert climate. The ranch was still small, but it was growing, and it was theirs. In the summer, Dahlia realized she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. They had talked about children, wanted them, but the reality of impending parenthood felt enormous. Catherine was thrilled, immediately beginning to knit baby items and offer advice, wanted or not. The pregnancy was difficult for Dahlia. The desert heat made her sick, and by fall she had to give up her teaching position, unable to manage the work and her symptoms. Money became even tighter with the loss of her income, but Vincent took on additional work, helping neighboring ranchers when his own chores allowed, saving every penny toward the expenses a baby would bring. In February, during a cold snap unusual for New Mexico, Dahlia went into labor. Catherine came to stay, along with the town doctor, and after 12 hours of difficult labor, their son was born. They named him Thomas Henry Marshall, after Vincent's father and Catherine's late husband, and Vincent cried openly when he first held his son, overwhelmed by love and responsibility. The early weeks of parenthood were exhausting. Thomas was a fussy baby who rarely slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. Dahlia struggled with recovery and the demands of nursing, while Vincent tried to manage the ranch and help with the baby. They were both perpetually exhausted, sometimes too tired even to speak, but they persevered through the difficulties together. As Thomas grew easier, settling into a better routine, life found a new normal. Dahlia took Thomas with her when she returned to teaching part-time, and the children at school delighted in having a baby in their midst. Vincent proved to be a devoted father, rushing through evening chores so he could spend time playing with his son before bedtime. By Thomas's second birthday, the ranch had grown to 50 head of cattle and was finally turning a real profit. Vincent hired on a young man from town to help with the daily work, freeing up time for him to focus on breeding and sales. Dahlia had returned to teaching full-time with Thomas attending the school as one of the youngest students, bright and curious like his mother. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that made grazing difficult, illnesses that struck the herd, the constant worry about money and weather, and the 100 things that could go wrong on a small ranch. But there were also evenings on the porch watching Thomas play, Sunday dinners at Catherine's with friends gathered around, quiet nights when Vincent and Dahlia sat together talking over the day and making plans for the future. In the spring of Thomas's 3rd year, Dahlia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier, and in November, she delivered a daughter they named Mary Catherine after Vincent's mother and Dahlia's cousin. Mary was an easy baby, placid and content, and Thomas proved to be a gentle older brother, fascinated by his tiny sister. The years rolled on, each bringing its own challenges and blessings. The ranch continued to grow steadily, and by their 10th anniversary, Vincent had paid off the land entirely and purchased an additional 100 acres. He now employed 3 full-time hands, and the Marshall Ranch was becoming known for quality cattle throughout the territory. Dahlia had become head teacher at the school when Miss Porter retired, a position of respect and responsibility in the community. Thomas and Mary attended her classes, now joined by a 3rd child, a son named William born 2 years after Mary. The Marshall home had expanded over the years, with additions to accommodate their growing family and the occasional guest. Catherine remained a constant presence in their lives, doting on her cousin's children, and maintaining her boarding house with the same efficiency she always had. She was nearing 60 now, with silver replacing the gray in her hair, but her spirit remained strong, and her affection for Vincent and Dahlia never wavered. On a warm summer evening in 1895, Vincent and Dahlia sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas, now 12, was teaching 6-year-old William how to rope a fence post while Mary, at 9, read aloud from a book to her younger brother. The setting sun painted the desert in shades of gold and rose, and the cattle lowed contentedly in the distance. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" Dahlia asked, her hand finding Vincent's as naturally as breathing. "All the time," Vincent admitted. "I think about how easily it might not have happened. If I had taken a different route home, if you had arrived a day earlier or later, if either of us had made different choices. I was so tired and frightened," Dahlia remembered, "standing there with everything I owned, not knowing if Catherine would even remember me or want me there. And then you appeared. You looked like you would fight the world if necessary," Vincent said with a smile. "Exhausted but determined, I knew immediately you were someone special." "Did you really?" Dahlia teased. "Or are you romanticizing the memory I knew?" Vincent insisted. "Maybe not that I would marry you specifically, but I knew you mattered. That stopping to help you was important." Dahlia leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in the familiar warmth of his presence. "You gave me more than a ride that day. You gave me a home, a family, a life I never dreamed possible. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Vincent corrected gently. "You made me want to be worthy of you, to build something lasting and good. You still do every single day." They sat together as the stars emerged, watching their children play and feeling the deep contentment that comes from a life built on love and shared purpose. The journey that had begun at the edge of Roswell with a simple offer of help had led them here, to a future neither could have imagined but both treasured beyond measure. Thomas called out to them from the yard, and they rose together to join their children, hands linked as they walked. The house that Vincent had built stood solid and welcoming behind them, filled with the accumulation of 12 years of marriage and partnership. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, a ranch to run, children to raise, a community to serve, but tonight was for family and gratitude, and the quiet joy of a life well lived. As the Marshall family gathered on the porch for their nightly ritual of stories before bed, Dahlia caught Vincent's eye across the children's heads and smiled. He smiled back, and in that exchange was everything they needed to say the love that had begun with a chance encounter and deepened through years of partnership, the gratitude for the life they had built together, and the certainty that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side. The desert night settled around them, warm and vast and full of possibility, just as it had been on that day 12 years earlier when a tired woman stood at the town's edge and a cowboy offered her more than just a ride. He had offered her a future, and together they had made it beautiful beyond imagining. Their story had become woven into the fabric of Roswell itself, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and love to transform lives and build something lasting in even the harshest landscape. And in the years that followed, as their children grew and eventually brought grandchildren to fill the house with laughter, as Vincent's hair silvered and Dahlia's beauty matured into something even more striking, they never forgot the gift of that first meeting. They told the story to their grandchildren, how Grandpa had seen Grandma standing alone with her belongings and had known immediately that she needed help, how a simple offer of assistance had changed both their lives forever. Thomas grew to take over the ranch eventually, with William as his partner, while Mary became a teacher like her mother, carrying on the family tradition of education and service. The Marshall Ranch continued to thrive, growing into one of the most successful operations in the region, a testament to the foundation Vincent and Dahlia had laid together. When Catherine passed peacefully in her sleep at 72, Dahlia mourned the woman who had given her a home and welcomed her with open arms. They buried her next to her husband Henry, and Dahlia placed wildflowers on the grave, grateful beyond words for the cousin who had made everything possible. Vincent and Dahlia lived to see their children married and their grandchildren grown, to celebrate 50 years of marriage surrounded by the community they had helped build and the family they had created together. They never took for granted the miracle of their meeting, the chance encounter that had blossomed into a lifetime of love. On their 50th anniversary, the town threw them a celebration at the same community hall where they had attended their first dance together. 3 generations of Marshalls filled the room, along with friends and neighbors and people whose lives had been touched by the schoolteacher and the cowboy who had built something beautiful in the New Mexico desert. "Tell us the story again," one of the grandchildren begged, "about how you met." So Vincent and Dahlia told it once more, their aged voices weaving the familiar tale of a summer day in 1883, a woman with all her belongings at the town's edge, and a cowboy who offered her a ride. They told it with the warmth of memory and the wisdom of years, and everyone listening understood they were hearing not just a story but a truth about love and fate, and the incredible power of human kindness. As the evening wound down and their family gathered close, Vincent pulled Dahlia onto the dance floor one more time. They moved slowly now, their steps careful but sure, their bodies knowing each other's rhythms after half a century together. The band played the same waltz they had danced to on their first date, and Dahlia rested her head on Vincent's shoulder, closing her eyes and remembering. "I love you," Vincent whispered into her hair. "From that first day until my last breath I will love you." "And I love you," Dahlia replied. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing me." "How could I not see you?" Vincent said softly. "You were everything I had been looking for without knowing I was searching." They danced until the music ended, surrounded by the life they had built together, and the love that had sustained them through everything. It had all begun with a simple act of kindness on a dusty road outside Roswell, and it had grown into something neither of them could have imagined in their wildest dreams: a partnership, a family, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. When Vincent Marshall passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84, Dahlia held his hand and whispered her gratitude for every day they had shared. She lived 3 more years without him, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them evidence of the love story that had begun at the town's edge so many decades before. They buried her next to Vincent under the New Mexico sky, and their descendants gathered to remember and celebrate the incredible journey that had started with 6 simple words: "Let me give you a ride." Those words had changed everything, had created a family and a legacy that would live on through generations, a testament to the transformative power of love found in the most unexpected places at precisely the right moment.